Podcasters often promise the moon if only you'll listen to their show. Podcasts often deliver on that promise, but sometimes promises need to be re-examined to keep both podcaster and listener happy. Hello and welcome to another Podcast Pontifications with me, Evo Terra. Every podcast is a promise. Are you living up to that promise? You, the podcaster, might have forgotten that promise. You see, your show and your episodes of your show sets several promises with listeners. Some, and perhaps most of them, are set during the episodes themselves. Just by listening, you will understand the promise. Listeners will almost come to expect that if they've listened to several different episodes. You're making these not necessarily obvious promises, but still, it's the promise of what actually happens. You do that by just using your voice, the tone of the way you speak, the things you speak about, your inflections. Your passions or lack thereof really come through. But that has natural drift. We're not the same person from episode 1 to episode 10, and we're certainly not the same person at episode 380. So you change as a person. Your interests change, your passions change. And because of that, the you who's delivering the episodes change, which means it changes your show. That's just going to happen over time. Now, you know me, you know that I love change. Change is good. We need to change. We need to evolve. That's great. So I think it's great that your tone and voice have shifted over time with your podcast. Now, your current listeners get to vote on whether or not they like those changes with that little unsubscribe button if they don't like it. Or if they do like the changes and they love the changes, then they're going to wind up telling more people about your program. But what about brand new people who are unaware of your voice and your tone and your style until they start listening? They're not going to know the promises made over the course of 10 episodes when they first start out. No, these people perhaps are a bit more discerning because they came in with a promise that you made and might have forgotten that you made. And that promise is how you described the show in text. So, think about that, especially if you've been podcasting for a long, long time. When's the last time you examined your show description? You know, that paragraph or so that appears inside the podcasting apps that people who are in a podcast listening app looking for a show probably read. When's the last time you read that? When's the last time you took a look at the show page of your website? I know you see that show page all the time. But when's the last time you really read the text? The text that you probably wrote, or maybe somebody wrote for you, that describes the show. What about your media kit? You probably send out a media kit quite a bit. You probably have a regular time when you go and reanalyze it, but you're probably only analyzing data, stats, those sorts of things. What about the description? The things that promise that you're setting there? If you're outsourcing this, and a lot of people do, the in-app episode descriptions, I'm going to keep calling them, the text that accompanies each of your episode that lives inside of everyone's mobile device as they're listening to your show. When's the last time you read that? What about the bio that exists on your social properties that list you as a podcaster, or perhaps your show's social media properties? When's the last time you examined that content? What about the automatic send of a welcome email when someone signs up to your show's newsletter? You're talking about the show in there. Is that the promise? Are you still living up to that promise? Because again, change is good. Change is great. It is quite natural for your show to drift over time, and therefore that which you deliver your audience to drift over time. It's fine. But those are promises that you wrote down in text. So you might need to reaffirm those promises and update them because, again, you change. Or maybe you have found that you are not being true to that original promise you set, or that promise you set last year, and rereading that text will make you go, I'm off of my true north. Maybe I need to get back to that. Okay, that's a great check-in for yourself. You can use what you originally set out as your promise to make sure you're still delivering on that, or modify it. It is totally up to you. You need to live up to the promises that you made with your podcast, either by changing those promises or going back and saying, let's get back on track with where I wanted us to be. Totally up to you. Can we talk Clubhouse for a second? I'm going to talk Clubhouse for a second. I apologize if you don't want to hear about Clubhouse. I'm doing it right now. Tonight, the Phoenix Podcast Club, PHX Podcast Club, is meeting live on Clubhouse at 6 p.m. Phoenix time. That's kind of nice. It'll be fun. Our first time getting together in like a year since the pandemic has shut us down. We're doing it on Clubhouse just to see how well that works. Now, tomorrow, Friday, there are no episodes of Podcast Pontification produced on Friday, but I am going to do another Podcast Pontifications on Clubhouse at 11 a.m. on Friday. That's 6 p.m. London time and 2 a.m. the next day in Hong Kong. If you happen to be awake at 2 a.m. in Hong Kong, you can join in on Podcast Pontifications on Clubhouse. It'll be just a group discussion of various topics. I've not set what the topic's going to be yet. I'm going to get to that right after I produce the show for today. And then on Sunday, if you're interested in podcast fiction, I'm going to host a Podcast Fiction Sunday on Clubhouse, where we, as listeners of podcast fiction, get together and talk about the shows we can't stop listening to. That is a lot of clubhousing, I know, but it's kind of a fun new medium to try out and play around the social audio space. Last two things, as always, please go to buymeacoffee.com/evoterra if you enjoyed the episode. Toss a couple of shekels my way. And most importantly, pretty please, with sugar all over it, please tell another friend of yours who's in podcasting about Podcast Pontifications. Let's spread the word and get more people thinking about the future of podcasting and the ways we can all make podcasting better. Because that's my promise to you, making podcasting better. Hopefully, I'm delivering on that. And with that, all the things I just said means I shall be back doing this on Monday for yet another Podcast Pontifications. Cheers.